Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be discussing the pressing need for media regulation in a roundabout way again, as the Mail on Sunday is forced to correct a racist opinion piece that they published which contained easily fact-checked falsehoods which were obviously designed to stoke racial tensions. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So earlier this year, the Mail on Sunday published a piece by Home Secretary Suella Braverman in which she made the claim that many racist groups have been trying to push for years, that grooming gangs in the UK are predominantly men of British Pakistani origin. And I recall at the time this incendiary piece was published, people were easily able to counter with Home Office statistics from Suella Braverman's own department, which showed that it was categorically untrue. It is a story circulated by racists who are taking advantage of the fact that the media place a disproportionate emphasis on the case of a particular grooming gang, which was from a British Asian background. And because the media don't spend time reporting on crimes like this by white people, and most of the public don't go as far as checking official statistics with claims like this, the narrative is easy to push. But it's not just that it's a false narrative. It is clearly designed to stoke racial tensions between people in communities. Braverman herself was trying to suggest that people living in Britain from certain backgrounds did not have compatible cultural attitudes. Now, what does that mean? That means we either need to send these people away to another country when this is their country, or we need to force them to change their behaviour because they're not compatible with us. It's really dystopian stuff. And it's a, from a political point of view, classic divide and rule tactic, blaming the enemy within your own community. But the Independent Press Standards Organisation has said that the Mail on Sunday has to correct the article. They've done that. They've not apologised, though. Their defence was, well, we checked it with the Home Secretary, that the line in question was correct. And she said, yes, so we published it. So their argument is that even though the claim was clearly false, using already published Home Office data to verify that it's clearly false, they think it was fine to publish because when they asked a known liar if it was true, and that known liar said, yes, it is, they published it. That's simply not good enough. I've talked a few times in the past, and this is the second time this week, about the need for media regulation. It's so important. Take the falsehoods in this article, for example. Now, the original article was shared widely and gleefully by the people who get confirmation bias for their racist outlook. Now, how many of the people who saw the original article, or even just the headline comments on social media, will see the correction? That's the problem. When a false story is published, nowhere near as many people see the correction as see the original incorrect article. And that's partly because the outlet will not make the correction as prominent as the original article, but mostly it's because most of the people reading these claims are not the people who, habitually buy the Mail on Sunday in this case. It's because it's shared on social media. And the people who want to share the original lies are not motivated to share the correction. So it will not get spread as far and wide. There's no way of compelling them to do so either. The way to deal with this, it's not to force corrections. That is better than nothing. When it happens, yes, of course, they have to correct it. But it's to try and prevent the false claims being published in the first place. Mistakes happen. I make mistakes. Professional journalists make mistakes. But this wasn't a mistake. They knew it was false. The published data showed it was false. As soon as it was published, loads of people were pointing out how it was false. The fact that the Mail on Sunday say they queried the claim with the Home Secretary shows that they knew it was false as well. Otherwise, why would they have queried it? So much of what the public think they know about politics and economics derives from what they read and hear in the news. So important that we put the onus on outlets to make every reasonable effort to be accurate. Much of the focus this week has been on GB News, arguably the worst of them, because they don't even try to behave like a respectable outlet, so they don't actually employ journalists. The other outlets employ journalists. They just don't make much effort to observe much journalistic integrity. But if we touch on GB News again, so They were complaining, for example, about the BBC. So BBC Newsnight had a piece where they discussed the BBC News scandal, and they had a panel which included Adam Bolton of Talk TV, who called for GB News to be shut down. And GB News and sympathetic outlets like Guido Fawkes said, well, the BBC were biased for having people on who were competitors of GB News, but not someone from GB News to defend them. And it's like, they're half right. They are half right. The BBC should not have had correspondents and journalists from other outlets to discuss the matter. But they shouldn't have had someone from GB News either. All of them have a conflict of interest, a financial conflict of interest as well, because they're employed by people who have an invested interest in this. So what each of them has to say on the matter is predictable. They might as well not have the panel. I could have told them what they were going to say based on where they work, because it's not their thoughts. They're not providing any commentary. They're providing the thoughts of their paymasters, their conflicts of interest. They should have had independent experts on that panel, like maybe people who've worked in media regulation but retired, or maybe academics, people without a conflict of interest with any particular outlet. And this is the problem with our media in general, including the BBC. See, journalism is supposed to be where, you know, you're reporting on something very topical. So you go to an expert, you find an expert, and you ask them questions, and you try to understand it in a way that the public will understand, and then that professional journalist turns the information they get from the expert into an easy to digest report that is accessible to the general public. But what we increasingly get is the so-called journalists and correspondents cutting out the middleman of the expert and just presenting their report entirely on what they think about it. They don't even go to an expert a lot of the time. That should never happen. If you have a panel to discuss something, the panel should always be made up of experts. The only journalist or correspondent there should be the one asking the questions. That's it. If we had a news media that behaved like this, there would be no need for people like me to try and present other views or, where possible, feedback on what experts are saying. As for calls for GB News to be shut down, that's just playing into the hands of the established media who don't like the competition, you know, like the Mail on Sunday. We shouldn't jump on bandwagons calling for one outlet to be shut down because we think it's the worst of them. You know, the problem is not GB News. The problem is the environments in which they exist. The quality of news reporting was atrocious before they came along. It will remain atrocious if they disappear up their own debt hole. What we should demand is that all outlets, from GB News to the Mail on Sunday to the BBC, be expected to follow a tough, uncompromising set of journalistic standards. That they don't get to claim, oh, this is just opinion piece. It's like, no, if you're talking about something that people will infer is news, it's news, right? And you follow this tough set of standards. Given their power to influence the perceptions of the public on incredibly important matters, it's so important. And even if it is just purely opinion stuff, that still has the power to inform perceptions. And there should still be regulation in place to make sure that you are doing what you reasonably can to make sure that the facts you are claiming are actual facts. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.